Welcome. Today, you're not just watching a speech, you're entering the soul of a nation the world has tried to silence, but never could. This isn't about politics or power plays. This is about identity, faith, and the unshakable will of a people who have stood tall for centuries. Iran's story is not one of fear, it's one of faith, not one of surrender, but of silent strength. Stay with me till the end, because what you're about to witness isn't just history, it's prophecy. It's the sound of a nation that refuses to bow, and the spirit of resistance the world still doesn't understand. Iran is not just a name on a map, it is the heartbeat of one of the oldest civilizations the world has ever known. Long before the rise of modern powers, before colonial borders and Western empires, there stood Persia, an empire of poets, warriors, philosophers, and architects. From Cyrus the Great to Darius, from Persepolis to the Silk Road, Iran was shaping the world while others were still learning to speak its language. This isn't just about history, it's about memory. A nation that remembers who it was can never be told who it should be. The West looks at Iran through the lens of modern politics, but Iran looks at the West through the lens of centuries. While superpowers rise and fall, Iran has endured. Empires have tried to rule it. Invaders have tried to erase it, but it remains, proud, unbroken, and deeply rooted in a legacy that goes far beyond oil, borders, or treaties. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. Iran doesn't carry itself with false pride. It carries the weight of poets like Hafez, minds like Avicenna, and visionaries like Rumi. These aren't just names, they are reminders of a time when Persia led the world in thought, science, and culture. That's why the West struggles to truly defeat Iran. Not because of its missiles or its alliances, but because of its memory. You can bomb a building, but you can't bomb identity. You can sanction the economy, but you can't sanction a 2,500-year-old soul. Iran is not trying to become something great, it's trying to reclaim what it already was. And when a nation remembers its greatness, no foreign power can define its future, because it already carries the blueprint of power in its past. And that the West cannot defeat. For decades, the West has used sanctions like a weapon, hoping to crush Iran's economy, break its will, and force its hand. They believed pressure would bring surrender. But what they didn't realize is this: you can't break people who were forged in fire. Sanctions didn't weaken Iran. They made it tougher, smarter, and more self-reliant. The Iranian people didn't collapse. They adapted. When access to medicine and food was restricted, communities supported each other. When banking systems were cut off, they developed workarounds. When the world tried to isolate them, they turned inward and built from within. Factories, farms, science labs, and underground networks started thriving under pressure that was supposed to destroy them. That's what the West never anticipated. That when you push a people who already know suffering, they don't fall. They fight with creativity. Sanctions created scarcity, but scarcity bred innovation. Iran didn't just survive, it evolved. It learned how to operate outside of the global system, how to make do with less, and how to grow where no one expected it to. More importantly, it created unity. Nothing brings a people closer than shared struggle. Under the weight of economic warfare, Iran didn't tear itself apart. It came together with grit. Every attempt to choke the nation only reminded the people what they were fighting for: dignity, independence, and control over their destiny. The West thought they were turning the pressure up, but in reality, they were tempering steel. They were creating a society that could endure hardship like no other. Iran became one of the few nations in the world that could stand tall and say, "We have endured what others would not survive." And when you harden a people like that, defeating them becomes more than difficult. It becomes impossible. Iran's strength isn't just measured in military drills or economic resistance. It lies in something far deeper: spiritual resolve. It's the kind of strength that doesn't shake under bombs or bend under threats. It's not rooted in power, it's rooted in purpose, in faith, in identity, and that kind of strength outlives presidents, sanctions, and even time itself. In the West, politics and power change with each election cycle. Beliefs shift with trends, but in Iran, the people draw from a spiritual current that runs thousands of years deep. Whether it's through Islam, Persian mysticism, or ancient cultural pride, The Iranian soul is built on unseen foundations. They are taught from childhood that life is more than comfort, it's about struggle, dignity, and faith in something higher. This is why Iran cannot be intimidated like other nations. You can shake its economy, isolate it diplomatically, but you cannot defeat a people whose strength is internal. Their sacrifices are made not for applause, but for meaning. When they stand against global pressure, they see it as an act of faith, not politics. That's power you can't measure on a chart. It's the same spiritual resilience that kept Iran standing through revolution, war, isolation, and internal hardship. It's what unites the old man praying at dawn with the student resisting censorship online. That belief, that struggle has value, that pain refines, that purpose is sacred, is woven into their national fabric. And that's why the West has never truly understood Iran, because it's trying to defeat something it can't see. Missiles can hit buildings, but they cannot destroy spirit. And when a nation moves with spiritual conviction, it doesn't just survive. It grows stronger with every test. Iran's faith doesn't just endure pressure, it feeds off it. That is a strength no weapon can break. Iran doesn't play fast, it plays smart. In a world obsessed with quick wins and loud displays of dominance, Iran stands apart with a strategy rooted in patience, depth, and long-term vision. The West often mistakes silence for weakness and delay for indecision, but Iran's history teaches a different lesson. True power isn't in how fast you move, it's in how precisely you strike when the time is right. For decades, Iran has watched as empires rise and fall, alliances shift, and enemies boast. But it doesn't rush into wars it can't win. It waits, it builds. It studies the board like a grandmaster, not a gambler. From regional politics to nuclear negotiations, Iran has shown that it's willing to endure, outlast, and outthink even the most powerful players. Look at how it handled proxy conflicts. While its adversaries spent billions on wars that led to chaos, Iran invested in influence, slowly building relationships, establishing networks, and gaining ground without ever needing to conquer it directly. That's not hesitation, that's strategy. It's playing chess while others play checkers. And when Iran does respond, it's not out of impulse, it's with purpose. Precision missile strikes, diplomatic pressure, or calculated defiance. It's all part of a larger plan. One that spans decades, not election cycles. The West often struggles with this mindset because it expects quick reactions. But Iran knows the game isn't won in weeks. It's won in generations. Strategic patience means knowing when not to move. It means understanding that silence can be strength and restraint can be resistance. Iran has mastered that art, and in a world that races toward chaos, a nation that walks with patience holds the real power. Because when you control the pace, you often control the outcome, and Iran never plays for now, it plays for forever. A culture that teaches resistance, not surrender. Iran's strength doesn't begin in its military or government. It begins in its culture, a culture that teaches its people from birth how to stand tall, speak truth, and endure suffering without losing dignity. It is a culture shaped not by comfort, but by centuries of struggle, poetry, faith, and memory. In Iran, resistance isn't just a strategy, it's a way of life. From the verses of Hafez and Sadi to the ancient wisdom of Zoroaster, Iranian culture has always carried an undercurrent of resilience. It's in their art, their language, their rituals, and their refusal to forget who they are. While the world celebrates surrender for the sake of convenience, Iran's culture praises patience in pain, courage in silence, and honor in standing alone. The West has often misunderstood this. It assumes that pressure will lead to compliance. But what they don't see is that in Iran, every act of resistance is rooted in cultural memory. Generations have been raised on stories of oppression and survival, of kings overthrown, of invasions repelled, and of truth defended. It's not just history, it's identity. This is why sanctions didn't break the people, why isolation didn't make them beg, why propaganda didn't erase their pride. Because when resistance is written into the fabric of your soul, you don't bend when the storm comes. You become the mountain it crashes against. And this culture is not fading, it's being passed down. From elders who lived through revolution to youth writing new verses of defiance, the spirit is alive and growing. You can suppress weapons, you can silence broadcasts, but you can't erase a culture that has made resistance not a choice, but a calling. That's what gives Iran its power, not in how loud it shouts, but in how deeply it stands. Iran's power doesn't stop at its borders. It stretches across the Middle East like an invisible hand. While the West has tried to isolate Tehran with sanctions, threats, and media narratives, Iran has quietly built an influence so deep and wide that it can't be contained. This influence isn't always loud. It moves in shadows, in alliances, in ideologies, and in loyalty that no money can buy. From Iraq to Syria, from Lebanon to Yemen, Iran has developed a network of partnerships, proxies, and cultural ties that give it a voice in nearly every major regional conflict. And this reach isn't about domination, it's about strategy. While global powers were dropping bombs, Iran was building relationships. While others were trying to install governments, Iran was earning trust in the streets, in the mosques, and in the hearts of the oppressed. It understands the region because it's part of the region. Its influence isn't flown in. It's grown from the ground up. It speaks the language, understands the pain, and taps into the historical wounds that still bleed across the Middle East. And in doing so, it has positioned itself as more than just a nation. It has become a symbol of resistance. The West can try to cut Iran off economically, but it can't cut off ideas. And Iran's ideas of self-rule, of standing against imperialism, of protecting identity, resonate far beyond its borders. Its fighters may not wear uniforms, but they carry loyalty. Its power may not look like a superpower's, but it echoes louder in villages, in ruins, in places the world forgets. That's the threat the West can't contain, not a nuclear weapon, but a belief system that inspires the marginalized to rise. And when influence spreads through belief, not bullets, no wall or sanction can stop it. Iran's reach is not in its might, but in its message. Iran knows it doesn't have the biggest military in the world. It doesn't need to, because its strength lies not in matching the West tank for tank or drone for drone, but in mastering asymmetric warfare, the art of fighting smart, not big. In a world where most powers rely on overwhelming firepower, Iran thrives on unpredictability, mobility, and innovation that defies traditional military logic. This is a country that turns scarcity into strategy. It builds missiles in underground bunkers. It launches satellites with homegrown rockets. It deploys fast attack boats in narrow straits where aircraft carriers can't maneuver. Iran's military doesn't fight like a conventional army. It fights like a chess player who knows every move is calculated and every piece, no matter how small, has purpose. Its strength shows in its missile program, which has become one of the most advanced in the region. It's in its drone technology, low cost, high impact, and difficult to trace. It's in its use of proxy forces, who fight not under a flag, but with loyalty to an idea. This approach confuses and frustrates the West, because it breaks every rule of modern warfare. Iran doesn't meet its enemies head on, it outsmarts them. The most dangerous thing about asymmetric power is that it's everywhere and nowhere. It strikes from a distance, hides in plain sight, and adapts quickly. Iran has built a defense system that doesn't depend on sheer numbers but on tactical brilliance and deeply rooted strategy. And that's why it's so hard to defeat, because you can't bomb an idea. You can't predict a fighter who refuses to follow your playbook. Iran's military is not built to conquer, it's built to resist, to survive, and to make sure that even the strongest enemy thinks twice before crossing the line. That's not just defense, that's deterrence through design. In a world where many leaders speak carefully, trying to please global powers or play both sides, Iran's leadership speaks with something rare, defiance. They don't beg for approval. They don't soften their words to fit into someone else's narrative. They speak with clarity, with conviction, and with a tone that tells the world, we may not be perfect, but we will never bow down. Iran's leaders have stood on world stages and called out hypocrisy without flinching. They have refused to sign deals that compromise their sovereignty. They have challenged sanctions, political pressure, and military threats with a steady voice that never shakes. Whether you agree with their politics or not, one thing is certain: they do not lead with fear. This is what separates Iran from many other nations. In the face of global isolation, they speak louder. In the face of sanctions, they stand firmer. They don't panic. They don't fold under pressure. Because they understand that real leadership isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about protecting the soul of your nation, even when it's inconvenient for the rest of the world. This attitude inspires not just Iranians, but others in the region and around the world who feel unheard, unseen, or suppressed. It creates a voice for the voiceless. It turns a small nation into a symbol of resistance. The West may not like what Iranian leaders say, but they're forced to listen, because the words are bold, unfiltered, and grounded in a world that refuses to accept domination as the default. And when a leader refuses to fear superpowers, it empowers the people behind them. That's how nations survive storms, not just with weapons, but with words that won't be silenced. Iran's leadership leads from the front, not with fear, but with fire. Iran's greatest untold strength lies in its youth, a generation born under pressure, raised in defiance, and shaped by the struggle of their ancestors. They didn't grow up in peace and privilege. They grew up watching their country resist sanctions, face wars, endure propaganda, and still stand tall. And what that created is a generation that is not weak, not distracted, but deeply aware, intelligent, and emotionally armored. These young people are not just inheriting the land, they're inheriting a legacy of poets who wrote truth under oppression, of soldiers who fought without glory, of parents who stood in food lines yet never bowed their heads. Iran's youth are not just students and workers, they are carriers of memory, and with that comes an unshakable identity. They've grown up watching their country vilified in international media, yet they still wear their heritage with pride. They are techs, savvy, globally aware, and highly educated, yet fiercely connected to their cultural roots. They build startups under sanctions. They write books and shoot films that tell their story. They protest not to destroy their nation, but to demand that it lives up to its full strength. And this is what worries the West most, that Iran's youth are not like others. They are not chasing fast fame or empty validation. They are focused, conscious, and spiritually tough. They don't crumble under pressure. They turn it into purpose. They are not waiting for the world to save them. They are preparing to lead it. This generation doesn't need to be taught how to fight back. They were born into resistance. They've seen hardship not as a curse, but as training. And when youth grow up with that kind of clarity and courage, you're not just looking at the future of a nation. You're looking at the reason it can never be conquered. In the world of power politics, the West has mastered two tools: money and military. It buys loyalty with aid and breaks resistance with bombs. But there's one thing it cannot buy and one thing it cannot destroy, and that's identity. And in Iran, identity runs deeper than oil, deeper than politics, and far deeper than any weapon system can reach. Iran's identity is forged from centuries of struggle, victory, betrayal, resistance, and pride. It's not something you see on the surface. It's embedded in the language, the poetry, the prayers, and the way a mother tells her child the story of her land. It's in the rhythms of Nowruz, the wisdom of Hafez, and the call to prayer that echoes through ancient cities. You can't erase that with a drone strike. You can't shake that with a headline. While other nations crumble when their systems are attacked, Iran holds firm because its foundation is not built on systems. It's built on soul. The West often assumes that if it can control the economy or pressure the government, the people will break. But they don't understand that Iranians don't draw their strength from outside validation. They draw it from who they are. This identity doesn't crumble in hardship. It sharpens. It doesn't fade in isolation. It shines brighter. And when you try to erase a people's voice, all you do is make it louder. That's what makes Iran undefeatable. Because missiles may hit buildings and sanctions may target banks, but identity is carried in hearts. And hearts don't break easily when they're trained to carry the weight of generations. So while the West plays a game of power, Iran holds onto something eternal. And in the end, it's not bombs or banks that decide who survives its identity. And Iran's identity cannot be bought, sold, or silenced. In a world dominated by noise and force, Iran stands with something far more powerful: memory, resilience, and identity. It cannot be broken by bombs or bribed with dollars because its strength lies in spirit, strategy, and a people who know exactly who they are. From ancient empires to modern defiance, Iran has proven that you don't need to be the biggest to be unshakable. You just need to be rooted in truth. Thank you for walking this journey of insight and awakening. Stay strong, stay aware, and never underestimate the power of a people who refuse to forget themselves. Good luck.